So into the agenda we go, and at the top of it, North Melbourne's decision to remove David Noble. 38 matches into his term at the helm of a rebuild. The disastrous 2022 season laid squarely at the feet of the senior coach.
Anyone that thinks they haven't hit rock bottom, well, they're kidding. This is rock bottom.
It's a constant discussion, is David Noble the man or not? It's an industry that doesn't suffer losing.
They certainly need a circuit breaker at that footy club because they just can't continue to go down the path they're going.
Today we made the mutual decision to part ways with our senior coach, David Noble. While we appreciate that we are at the beginning of a rebuild, it doesn't give us a free pass in terms of expecting competitive performances.
It became apparent a few weeks ago that the club and I might have to have a serious conversation about the future of our on-field results. I gave my absolute heart and soul to the job, but ultimately, the scoreboard doesn't make for great reading. At the end of the day, the buck stops with me. I haven't been able to get the performance, and that's me. If I'm talking on the players' behalf, there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of emotion, and they were shattered. It's been an honour to work with those guys. So yeah, it was bloody tough.
For him to get up this morning and say goodbye, it was tough to see that and to share in that, but I think he has left his club in a better position than when he first got in. He's done plenty of heavy lifting for us and he's sown plenty of seeds, I think, that will flourish in the very near future. So it's sad to see him go, but unfortunately that's the business we're in at the moment.
I think what I've loved about North is the spirit of its people. That's why I think our place is in great hands, because we've got great spirit. Football is my life. It has been very good to me. I'm still really proud of the fact that I put my hand up and chose to have a go. I'll step away from the game for a period. I'll reflect, refresh, and look forward to the next challenge.
The end for David Noble as delivered by North Melbourne last night and announced this morning. So, David King, a brutal day at your old club.
Yeah, it was a tough day, wasn't it? A tough day for everyone. You know, it's always sad when someone runs aground, really. Yeah, it's a tough industry, though. I think that there's been many tried and failed, and unfortunately he goes into that pile. We've had over 100+ coaches since the year 2000 ticked over. And unfortunately, most of them... It's a high failure rate. That's just how... You know what today really missed? I need a laugh, Robbo. I need a laugh. Do you know what today missed? Do you remember this? The last time we sat down here when there was a coach sacked?
Can you hear me? Bad weather up here. I'm not getting it connected. Can you hear me back?
Yes, you're coming in loud and clear, Robbo.
No.
Sam, what do you got for us?
Hello, bud.
Where were you today? I needed you.
No, not today.
Not today?
Not today.
All right, let's ponder the serious questions.
All right,
out
let's
of it.
get serious.
Is it the right decision to part ways with David Noble?
You know what? I think it is. And it's brutal, it's hard, but I think that when you look at the direction of the club, the development that is lacking, the progression in terms of the game plan, it's a tough call, but 35, 38 games in, as brutal as it is, he hasn't been the man for the role. Now, you can take whatever angle you like, and you can go back as far as the day he was appointed, or you can go to, the start of the year where Todd Goldstein starts on the bench for round one, and he's your 300-game ruckman who's going to show the way. You can talk about dropping the new recruit after one game at the start of the year. I think there's been a few errors along the way. And you can talk about the way they were spoken to after a Brisbane game, or does he apologise? There's a few little speed humps, and you can't have speed humps when you're in this phase. So I think that David would concede that at a time where he had to be absolutely bulletproof, he wasn't. And in the end, the wins and losses get you.
So there are two elements to it clearly, Robbo, aren't there? There's the on-field and the off-field. So let's do the on-field first. Sonia Hood said it's just not working. And this was, if you go back about 6 weeks, and David was given the chance to speak in a real Dorothy Dixer from a fan about what the quantifiables were, what the measurables were. So these were his measures, marginal gains and incremental wins, year on year, except they were all running in the wrong direction. Percentage out the gate, quarters won, collapsed. The heavy defeats, the losing margin, the points against, and the 100 points conceded. There was no measurable by which Noble could sit there and say, in year 2, this is on track toward being a successful program and team.
Smarter minds than me. And it'd be great to get David Noble to talk about how he wanted the game to be played and what changed from last year to this year. What levels? Kingy, you've spoken before, and Joey, about what he's trying to implement at that football club. When a club fails like it has this year, it's more than I'll say it again. It's more than just a coach telling the players how to play. It's more. There's a morale, a camaraderie around the group. Now that is led by the coach, absolutely led by the coach. My feeling is with David Noble, he may be a good coach, but he may not be a good coach for a list like North Melbourne. He was brutal, really demanding of standards, and maybe if he had a more experienced group, that sort of feedback can be, OK, I accept that, but when you're younger, maybe... Well, players clearly fell out with him. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen, King? And it's not players not getting a game. Players in the starting 18 have fallen out with him. How does that happen?
A whole host of reasons. You know, confusion with your role, confusion with the game plan. So you can be made to look really poor as a player when you play confused. So that affects your performance, it affects your feedback, whether that's internal or external. These are their careers.
But where's the rest of the coaching group as well, David?
Yeah, OK, and they may pay a price as well. So let's not say that it's all David Noble's fault, because it hasn't finished yet, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that the other side of it is, it almost appears as if there's been some other relationships strained at the Kangaroos, and they've had their ability to have a chat too, and maybe that information come to light was damning in the end.
That unrest has been real throughout the year, and clearly that was articulated through Jeff Walsh to the board, who took it upon themselves to act.
There was mixed messaging from Sonia Hood today.
Yeah.
And I thought she was brilliant. I really did. I thought, wow, well done. Really strong, really decisive. But I thought there was some mixed messaging. Like last week was the worst loss they've had for the year, 112 points to Geelong. And then they have their best competitive performance of the year, and then they sack him on the Monday. So the board, Sonia Hood, has been given information to make the club move on Noble this week, but they didn't have last week. Last week was, hey, it's over. Come in Tuesday. We can't have that, 112. We just can't have that. But it wasn't. He was saved. So
there's more
messaging.
Maybe you're in a no-win situation today.
So I think the no-win situation goes back a long way. So I had a couple of things ringing in my ears. One that you said early May, the rebuilding coach so rarely makes it. And then I went back to the interview that you did with Ben Buckley on the morning that David Noble was appointed. And he said it was a 2 to 3 year timeline to be in the top 4 and contending. And just the fundamental misunderstanding of they had gone about a raised earth rebuild, and the fundamental misunderstanding within the club that had Sonia Hood today use the phrase, we need time, whilst David Noble is sitting there going, was 38 games enough? Well, not in my experience. So I think there's an element of not recognising their full scenario walking into it, which has doomed the whole thing.
Yeah, there was a bad misread. Ben Buckley, if he had his time again, he would not say that. He clearly, the clubs, why do presidents say that? They put really big expectations on, and people try and sell hope, and I understand the selling of hope when there's been a coach replacement, because people need hope. They want to latch on.
Yeah.
We'll come with you. But we've got to temper 2 to 3 years. This game's really, really hard. We're dancing around the subject here. Come on, let's be honest. David Noble is not coaching North Melbourne because of the relationship strain between him, the players, and him and other people. When the recruiting staff...
We did just say...
Sorry, but when the recruiting staff walked...
Yeah.
OK, When there's the biggest alarm bells of all. A week before the mid-season draft, and 3 of them walk out. 3. We talk about the kangaroo spirit and the shin boner and treating people nicely. 3 of them had reason to leave that football club, and there was, and you can talk more about that. I was talking before about the spirit of the club.
Yeah.
It's broken. And Sonia Hood's talking today like, no, everything's okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. Your list managers have walked, your coach has just been sacked, your CEO's under enormous pressure, okay, even though Sonia Hood is convinced to say that he's guaranteed to stay, and the assistant coaches, which we're just talking about, surely this club is in crisis. In football crisis.
Oh, yeah. When you sack a coach, your club's in crisis.
Right, but
no matter where the rest of it is, you're in crisis. This is the end point of all of those things you're talking about.
You can have 4 coaches in 4 years.
Yeah. And maybe it's the 4 wrong coaches in 4 years. This happens. I'm not excusing anyone. These are the decisions you can't get wrong. They just cost you years.
Yep.
And I don't think you need to lie to your members. There's no need to sell hope if there's no hope there. If you need to buy time, buy time. Just take them on the journey. North Melbourne fans are understanding. If the next coach comes in, the president gets up and says, this is going to take 5 years, everyone relax. They'll still come to footy. They'll still buy their membership because it's what they do. You don't need to say we're winning a flag in 3 years. That's just crap.
So these were always likely to be the Mark Neild years rather than the Paul Roos years, and that's how it's panned out.
Yeah.
So what next? Is Jeff Walsh has 2 weeks to run in his football department review. Sonia Hood is on record today as saying she's not interested in wholesale change, and she guaranteed the chief executive his job. So the open question for me is, have they had their Peter Jackson moment yet? Which is actually the moment from which the foundations are set. You go through these periods of build and collapse, and we have used Melbourne and Carlton erroneously all year, ignoring the build and collapse years. You've got to get to where the foundations are solid, and North Melbourne isn't there yet.
Isn't there yet? Yeah, I don't know how you know whether you're there yet or you're not. I don't know how you put your finger on that. And there's been 100 people before Peter Jackson. So, it's hard, isn't it? It's a tough... Not a lot has to go wrong, and there's many touch points across the business that can fail you and stop you short of success. And there's only one success in our business, and that's premierships. It's a tough business. But I do know that you can't have on-field success without off-field stability and off-field...
confidence?
Confidence and surety that the business is tracking in the right manner. So all the things she said today, Sonia Hood, about the business being financially viable, a stable environment, growth coming in all those things are important. And maybe that is the thing that gives you the opportunity on field going forward.
But they are important.
They are.
But this is a footy club. It's not the footy, it's the playing of footy which makes a successful team. Peter Jackson spoke tonight. He said, when I got to Melbourne, there was 32,000 members. I noticed the other day there was 65,000 members. People would have laughed at us. If I said we're going to have 65,000 and a flag, fixture list management. Footy clubs are there for football, and North Melbourne have failed.
Without it being
but they aren't. They were $9 million in debt not long ago.
Yeah, I get that.
So they've worked really hard to limit the debt. It's always in retrospect, Jared, that you find he was the man. That is always decided 3 years down the track. And the Kangaroos have made decisions and they haven't worked. But they've got to keep looking, and then they'll find that person. Now, who is that person? Is it Alistair Clarkson as coach? I've suggested Mark Brayshaw as their friends come in as a partnership. I don't know if that's going to happen, right? I don't know. They're going to go after Buckley, they're going to go after Lyon, they're going to say no, and they're going to say no. But they've got to keep searching. Off the top of your head, have you got anyone that you think, or have you got anyone that says, geez, I'm gonna back him in. I'm gonna back him in.
Well, I'm not sure about we'll get to the coach side of it in a moment, but I think for the last 15 years, the Kangaroos have elevated people that have been just that far short of the role they've been elevated to.
For like who?
Across the business, you can work it out. Most of them are no longer there. And I think if you ask a second in charge to do a first man in charge role and they're just that far short, you pay a price. You have a few of those people in your business and you pay a price. They've got to go and start to endorse and attract industry leaders. You've got to get... I mean, that's why I was so disappointed they didn't get Brian Cook last time he was available. You know, because that's what they need. They need someone that says, this is the way. So... those days are gone.
The war horses.
Well, they're not necessarily...
No, that's what they're called.
Yeah.
Cook, Swan, Jackson, Nesbitt. They're known in the group as the war horses.
Hard to get.
Because, see, Peter Jackson again spoke that our industry, our football industry, is failing to bring young executives through. And I thought, geez, that's a really telling point you make, because straight away, the AFL is going to get involved, Jared. The AFL are going to get involved. And they're going to say, right, who can we bring? They put everyone else everywhere else. They'll look, maybe it's a Nesbitt. Hey, Trev, do you want to come over? 65, last challenge.
Do you know what those guys embrace? Whether they're male or female, I don't care. They embrace relationships. They embrace people. They know you can't do it by yourself. So that for me is a key.
So the coaching challenge, the coaching issue, this conversation very rarely gets it right. So rather than speculate on people, just if North Melbourne asked you to participate in this, David, who would be your first 3 phone calls?
Yeah.
In order.
Yeah. OK, in order. He's very specific on that, Jerry, isn't he? Look, I think North Melbourne needs someone like Ross Lyon. I would ring Ross Lyon and I would say, look, 13 years at St Kilda and Freo and you've had great success. You've been a disciplinarian. You've set standards. You've been the same with player 1 as player 20 in terms of what's required. Preparation, performance, the whole lot. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You've got a great knowledge of people around the industry, would be able to bring a pit crew with him that he would be able to endorse, whether that be recruiting or assistant coaching or development. And you give him the job for 4 to 5 years and you say, you are the man, what can we do to help you? That would be my first call. Now, he may not want to do that. He may not want the job. I don't know whether he's... It may be a very quick phone call, Jared.
Yeah, and that's the whole process is finding out. So who's your second phone call?
I think you've got to ring Alistair Clarkson. There's no doubt about that. He knows the place. He's spent some time there, 17 years at the Hawks, 26 finals, tactically outstanding. He's an innovator, all those sorts of things. My only reservation is he a believer in the draft? Because I think there's still a lot of drafting to be done to get this list back to where it needs to be, and I don't know if he's still got that belief. And if he's not, then I think you've got to find out from the AFL what's going on with these priority picks, because that's got to be part of the sell. Yep. But you certainly got to be asking Alistair. There's no doubt about that. But you can't blow the bank on the rest of your football club just to get Alistair.
And your third call?
Third call was an interesting one. So if you can't get either of those two gentlemen, then I think you're back to the absolute process of it all. And you run a proper process. I felt sorry for Robert Harvey last time this job was up. I don't think he got a fair run. OK? So put that on the table. I think that right now, Adam Uze, Ash Hansen, Daniel G and Sirica, those guys are top of the tree of the next in line. But I wouldn't necessarily be ringing those guys. I'd be saying, we want you to apply. And it is a genuine race against, and you pick 3, 4, 5 people. Whatever you want to interview, you pick those guys and you tell them that's it. And then you go after the support crew, and this is where it gets really interesting. Choco Williams is a must if you're going to have a young coach. Leon Cameron, a must. I would go for these types of guys. James Hird, hey, come and do your 2 years back in the system with us before you put your hand up to coach again. And get things rolling from a support crew side of things to support that guy who's going to be inexperienced, and you can't have another failure just because of inexperience. So that's where I would go. You may need help with a soft cap. I think the AFL have got to recognise the Kangaroos need help.